Howdy friends, Tulio here, and this is another episode of Real Pivot Connections. We're going westward. We're going out to Fresno to hang out with our friend Greg Kosareff. How you doing, Greg?
Doing great. It's early in the morning. The sun's not up yet, but I'm loving this. I'm ready.
Well, I'm excited to spend some time with you and to learn about Greg. I've seen your face in the squares. I've seen you share. You and I've exchanged some messages, but now I actually get to know you and learn
Yeah.
about you. Tell me first of all, this is Kosareff. I've never met a Kosareff before.
No.
Where does the name Kosareff hail from?
Well, I'm Russian descent. I'm a third generation. And so we come from, how do I say this? Different parts of Russia where it was not Moscow or anything like that, the outskirts of Russia. So I'm Russian descent. It's a Russian name. An interesting thing, when you look at what Kosarev stands for, in Russian, there was a tool, and they used to cut their hay with. It was called a kasid. And so, how they named us is one of my ancestors had a nose. It was a sickle or whatever they call those things, and it was shaped as a kasid. So they just called us Kasidyov. In Russian, that name is Kasidyov, and it really is because of a tool, and somebody had a nose that shape. That's how I got my name.
Wow, that is neat. I love to learn where people come from, what their family is. I looked up your name too. And the interesting thing was it said that y'all are predominantly in California.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Your family, like right to where you are. I was like,
right.
that is very interesting. How many people have a name that says like, you guys are local to you?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, his uh his his father, my great grandfather had four brothers and a sister when they came over from Russia many years ago. So that's it. There was four brothers that carried that name. And then of course, the tree grew, So and we're all based in California, based mostly.
Okay. So let's start at your youth. Now you live in Fresno. Were you born in Fresno or did you grow up in a different part of California? Where did Greg begin?
I was born in Los Angeles County in 1960,
Okay.
and so that's where I was born. And I lived in Southern California for 20 years. I moved out to the Fresno area when I was 20 years old with my family.
Okay. What brought your family there?
You know, we were, let's see, how do I say this? We're a very close knit community, the Russian people, that in our culture, in our faith, and so we have certain. I'm going to just put it out there. I come from a faith that's called Molokon, where Mol is the nickname. Molokon Christians. We're Christians, and so we came here looking for a better life out of Southern California, and we had churches that were based in Kerman, right outside of Fresno, and we
Mm.
had churches based out there. And I had grandparents that were living in that town, and so that my parents just wanted a better life for their children, so we moved out here. Simpler.
Okay. What was it your grandparents that came first, or did your parents come from Russia?
No, my parents were born here. My
Okay.
grandparents actually were born. It was my great grandfather. My great grandfather came over with his brothers. And so my grandmother, actually, a group of colony of Russians, when they came over from Russia, moved to Mexico. So my grandmother, although she's Russian descent, she was born in Mexico. So my grandmother and her sisters on both sides actually all knew to speak Russian, Spanish, and English. So
Mhm.
growing up, when we had family get-togethers, when there was singing going on, it was in all three languages, and it was a lot of fun. It was a
That
lot
is
of
a
fun.
neat combination, first of
Yeah.
all. What do you know, like when your family came from Russia, what did they do? Do you know what their business was? Were they in agriculture? What were they into?
Well, a lot of them that moved to the valley, and the majority of the family lived in Southern California. But my grandfather did move to a little town here called Helm, and they were farmers.
Okay.
And so, but a lot of them just went to work. They were unskilled, like a lot of different
Mhm.
people, and so they worked for box companies. When I say box companies, my dad worked for a cardboard company making boxes and stuff like that. So, they just went to work. They were very hard workers.
Mhm.
And then my dad actually went into construction and for a while, and then after that, he bought a sanitation company back in Los Angeles. You can buy you could be a one truck sanitation garbage man. And that's what my dad was,
Okay.
and some of them built it up 2 and 3 trucks, some built it up to 12, but now they're all incorporated. And I'm not to go off to a tangent of trash, but that type of business is not existent anymore. The one small truck, type of thing. But that's what we grew up with my dad being in construction, carpenter, and I used to go on the rubbish truck with him early in the mornings and help him as a kid.
Wow. Wow. Now, was it just you or was it a big family? Did you have siblings?
Well, I'm the middle child of 5 siblings,
Wow.
and then my dad had they had smaller. But what was really interesting is my dad's mother came. They had originally 18 children. I knew 13 of them. Of my grandmother's siblings as a kid, I knew 13 of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our family really, has branched out. Got a lot of third cousins out there.
I mean, and I learned just from like, history and stuff, and my wife's family from Iowa, farming and stuff, bigger families, you
Yeah,
know.
they needed kids to work in the field. Seriously.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So
Yeah.
what was your youth like? You grew up in Southern California. Tell me a little, what do you remember? This I remember my youth, no phones, outside. Tell me what it was like growing up as a kid.
That's funny. That's interesting you say outside, because I grew up in a town called Montebello, California. And Montebello, I graduated from high school there. We were the Oilers, because we had Oiler derricks in the town of Montebello up in the foothills and stuff. So I grew up very a very what's the word I kind of was trying to think of some words, but we were very close and
Mhm.
conservative. There you go. Very conservative families, but we would go to school. I was We were allowed to play sports, and our sports, I was in water polo and swimming in the
Wow.
4 years of high school. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. And then we could come home. Of course, we had to do our homework. The TV couldn't go on right away. We were allowed to. My mom really wanted us outside as much as possible. I don't know if she wanted her free time alone, but we spent a lot of time with our neighborhood kids. We grew up in a urban city, so there was single family homes, and there was kids on the block, and we were out playing until it was dinner time. And
Mhm.
then mom would yell out the door, "You guys come home, it's dinner time." You would yell it out. In those days, Tulio, I remember the other mothers in the neighborhood. They are looking for their kids. There were no cell phones. And I can remember the lady across the street, and this is funny. She would yell out, "Johnny, Johnny, come home." That's how they gathered their kids.
Yeah.
Now you text them, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The light would come on the street. That's when it was time to come in the summertime, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
We had a large backyard, and we were fortunate. We had a go-kart, and we had a mini bike. So we would go out, and all the neighborhood kids would come over to get on our go-kart. And we had a little track, and we'd go around. We had chickens in the backyard, and dog, our dog Duchess. I mean, that was life. You were outside and you
Mhm.
were playing in the dirt and you
Yeah,
were, hands were dirty before, mom would yell out, go wash your hands before we ate. Why did
yeah,
mom do that? You're bringing up memories to me, Tulio,
yeah.
because we were outside in the dirt.
The dirt. Yeah.
Is that common today now for people to tell their kids, go wash your hands before we eat?
No, not as much, to be honest.
I
Greg,
never thought of that.
when was your mother also of Russian descent?
Yes. In our culture, it's interesting, and I know I could get a lot of pushback on this, but we married, I'm going to be honest, we married within our own.
Yeah, that's understandable. Tell me, I want to ask kind of a cultural question in that respect, okay? If you could think back to growing up, youth through high school when you were in the home a lot, can you remember certain meals that your mom made that were just quintessentially from your culture and that maybe you might miss now? What would be something mom made? Can you remember?
Well, I would we don't we you may have heard of borscht. Borscht is a staple item, and it is vegetable soup.
Hmm.
And you had probably 18 different types of vegetables. You had beets, you had cabbage, carrots, and squash. And mom would make a big pot of borscht on the weekend. And we would, our house in our community, every weekend we were going to somebody's house company. We go to church. We were brought up in a Christian, family, our faith, and every Sunday was church, Sunday school, then church. We would come home. Either we were invited to other people's houses for lunch, and they would serve this borscht. And it's interesting because back then, when people went to go visiting, you never called and said, "Hey, are you home?" or texted and said, "Hey, we want to come by." We would be home and we'd look out our window, and here came church family. They would just drive up, the families, the kids would get out of the car, and everybody would run in. The kids would be outside, the parents would be having their coffee, and we other staple items were like we always had green salads. You had lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumbers cut up, and you'd squeeze lemon and salt on there. Homemade breads. We had things that you would call them blintzes, I think, or crepes. We called them blintzia. We loved our blintzia with cream, and we use sour cream on everything. We make pancakes with sour cream on it. Have you ever had a
Wow.
pancake with sour cream? Okay, who's ever listening to this, you got to try it. When you make your pancakes, get some sour cream, dab it on your pancake with the maple syrup. I don't know how to eat a pancake without sour cream. You
You
know,
taught me a new way to eat a pancake today. I love it.
some people goes, "Oh, that's gross." No, those staple items we did a lot of because they were raised on the farms. They would have their milk, their cows, excuse me, and they would have milk and cream, and dairy products was a big staple for us. So we had 5 kids, and what was interesting about our dinner tables, mom and dad were very conservative, so they may go out and buy 3 steaks. They would cook them, and we would all have to take a partial steak. We never got a full steak. Or she would bake a chicken, and one week I got the drumstick, the next week I get the white meat or the thigh, and we got our chickens off a farm. And there was a have you ever had a chicken gizzard, a gizzard of a chicken?
Yeah.
That was like, who was going to get that week? Whose turn is it, right? Or my mom would and dad would buy a cow's tongue, and they would bake that cow's tongue. It was so delicacy. Oh my gosh. And we would make cow tongue sandwiches. So they had to take the food and spread it out back then. There was 5 of us kids.
Different
And
time. Yeah.
that's what I remember, you
We
know.
we didn't waste.
Yeah.
No waste. Greg, I want to move on a little bit in your life now and say, okay, sounds like you were a swimmer. You probably did that in high school and stuff like that. If you had to name what was your subject that you excelled in? in high school?
Probably math. I would
Okay.
say, yeah.
Okay. And
I
then
was uh, I was horrible with my hands growing up as a kid, doing mechanical stuff. So like I'm not ashamed to say this, but I got a D in auto shop and woodworking. I didn't do very well in those kind of subjects.
I think
But
it's cool
math,
that you had those subjects, though. Those subjects don't exist in many places anymore. So just the
oh,
fact
they
that
don't
you were
have,
exposed to them is cool.
yeah. And we had office machines back in high school where we took courses and they taught us how to use a printer, the old printing machines or the calculators. I feel like I'm really dating myself. I was so good at the 10 key fast. You see how I'm talking fast and I move fast? I would get done with my projects like 10, 15 minutes before everybody else and thought, what am I doing wrong? I didn't have confidence in myself. So I figured I was doing something wrong, but I was so good at the 10 key fast, just like I talk fast.
What came after high school for Greg?
I tried to go to college
Mhm.
and I think I went for 8 weeks and I'm not I don't like, I'm not a good studier. I don't like to read. I'm being honest with you.
All right.
Reading was a chore. So what I did is I went to work right away and I worked for a car dealership in the auto parts. And
Okay.
so that's what I did. I went to work right away.
Okay. Okay. So you worked in auto parts for a while. Tell me
Mhm.
just like your series of careers that led you
Okay.
to real estate.
So I moved out here when I was 20. So from 18 to 20, I was working what's called Bob Johnson's GMC. It was a GMC dealership. I worked in the parts department. Back then, inventory was kept on a card system, and I had to keep inventory. When we moved to Fresno, I went to a company that that helps look for jobs for you,
Mhm.
and they found me a job. It was called Baker's Welding Supply. Believe it or not, I worked in the welding supply company for 18 years. I could sell you welding supply. I could sell you MIG and TIG. I couldn't weld myself. I didn't even like it. But man, I could sell you the products. I could tell you today what on a gas cutting torch, what the parts are, what the numbers are. So I did that for 18 years. And in that 18 years, uh, 1995 is when I got licensed to be a realtor. So
Mhm.
I still worked 3.5 years in a full-time job before I went into real estate full-time.
Okay.
So those jobs kind of crossed over a little bit, you
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
get off work between 3:30 and 4, and I hightail it to the town called Kerman where I was licensed, and I started working there and I started my career at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Was there
And
someone or something, some occurrence that got you interested in real estate? What was it that made you go? Sounds like you were in sales and doing good at sales. You found your
serving
niche
people,
in
yeah.
that, but what led you to go, I'm gonna do this real estate thing?
Well, when I was in high school back in Montebello,
Mhm.
I uh, I had a family friend. Her name was Judy, and she's now deceased. But Judy took a liking to me. She worked as a realtor, and
Mhm.
in this little real estate office, the owner did taxes. And so she says, Greg, the broker needs somebody to come in after I was in high school and help him with his taxes. And basically, I was filing.
Uh-huh.
Then I was promoted to giving people their taxes and collecting $5 and $10 to have their taxes done. That's all he charged. Anyway, I would go and I'd look up in the front offices, and back then, all these pictures of homes were posted around the room. They didn't have a computer. And
Mhm.
so they would list a home, take a picture, and put it in a frame on the wall.
Yeah.
And I'd look at that. And when I was 17 years old, I told myself I wanted to be a realtor. And she started taking me to open houses. Interesting, I didn't get my license till I was 35 years. I tried 3 times because I told you I don't like to read. I don't like to
Right.
take tests. It took me 3 times to start the course and actually finish it. And I was
Yeah.
35. So back in 17, and when I look at my high school annual, the seniors got to say what is their aspirations? What do they want to be after high school? And the only thing I put was realtor.
Wow.
17, that was when I was 17. Age 35 is when I became it.
Wow. That is impressive. Well,
Yeah,
you followed through. What?
it took a while.
You did. That's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Now, you've told me that you have grandchildren and things. So, if you're okay with it, share with me a little bit about your family.
So I've been married to my wife, Manya. She's Russian.
Okay.
And
Say her name again.
Manya,
Anya.
Manya.
Anya. Okay, that's a neat
And
name.
that in English translates to Marilyn.
Okay.
It could be Mary, Marilyn, but it's her Russian name. Manya and I have been married for 41 years. We will be married 42 years this coming August. We dated only 30 days. I knew her because I knew her brother. And I only dated her 30 days and then asked her to marry me. Thank God she said yes, because if she knew me that well, I don't know if she would have ever said yes if she got to really know me. So it's perfect. Just date there. She saw the good part. But and we have 4 children. Our two girls, 2 boys, and they all live very close to us, within 30 minutes or less. And so we have the 8 grandchildren. I think I have five. We have 5 grandsons and 3 granddaughters from the
Oh, wow.
age of 7 down. So take 8 kids, 7 down. When they all come over, we're very blessed. We're very fortunate. It's just the house kind of shakes. It's loud. There's crying, there's screaming, there's laughter. We have it all. We're very
That's a lot of people. I assume holidays are either really crazy or you have to start splitting them up to some degree.
well. We just my wife and I and our children and grandchildren. I believe there's 17 of us, and yeah, I'm without words. I can't express how blessed I am.
Oh,
It's
it
it's
sounds like it.
that is the best part of our life. It doesn't matter how successful you are, or maybe not. I don't know. But the family, I tell people that if I could have skipped raising my children and just went to grandchildren, I do it in a heartbeat. Those grandchildren, you learn unconditional love with grandchildren. With your children, you're constantly, whatever it is, teaching them, raising them, scolding them, disciplining, loving them. But when it comes to grandchildren, I don't care what they do. That unconditional love is just awesome.
What do your grandchildren call you?
Ziada,
Gieda.
Ziada. If
Gieda.
you could kind of picture Deda maybe, but Ziada is grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah,
for my
I
wife,
even say it right.
yeah. And for my wife, it's Babunya.
Onya.
Babunya is the grandmother.
That is very neat. What's something that you enjoy to do, and your grandchildren enjoy to do? Like some grandchildren might like, I like to go fishing with grandpa. I like to go hunting with grandpa. What would you say, even if it's ice cream, what would you say is the thing that your grandchildren look forward to doing with you?
They like to interact and get physical, whether that means kind of wrestling with them, tease. I do a lot of teasing with them. I'll go out. I bought a tether ball just recently, and trying to get them outside. So I bought a basketball, a tether ball, and I could just go out there with the little. His name is Mason, 3 years old, and we just sit back and forth with that tether ball. So interacting with them, playing with them, those type of things. I have boxing gloves, and at
Mm.
times I'll put the boxing gloves on, give them a set, and fight with them. Of course, my wife, she gets a little not paranoid that they're going to get hurt, but she gets, because I get them riled up right before they go home.
I bet you and your wife have a lot of things you have to go to or a lot of choices of events to go to. Are there certain hobbies, sports, things on whether you're like, oh, this Saturday we're here because we're going to watch the kids playing this or doing this? What would that be?
Soccer. Been to the soccer game yesterday, and I didn't make it. They had a jogathon. Is that what you would call it? At their school.
Mhm.
So they ran laps, and those kind of things. And we've been to the Christmas programs. There's just it never stops. There's always something, especially when it's springtime and all the sports are, people are doing the sports. That's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And
Well,
then we
Greg,
have four kids that like to disappear. So they'll, hey, can you watch our kids for a couple nights or a night or the day? And we never say no. We could never say no, you
good,
know. Yeah.
good. Well, Greg, I have so enjoyed this time with you. We're going to go through the last part here. I call it speed round. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to ask you some questions. Just first thing that comes to your mind. All right. And this one should be easy. First job.
Working in a tailor shop, dusting for a lady. A little tailor shop. I worked an hour and a half a week cleaning the shop up.
Greg's favorite place to go out to eat, right? Like now in your life, or if you and your wife are going to go out to dinner tonight, where, and you could go anywhere you want in town, where would it be?
Mediterranean food.
Okay, cool. Favorite band.
Oh,
Let's say you could get a ticket to go to see someone in concert.
and I don't even know if they're together. I grew up with the Beach Boys.
Okay, cool. Vacation spot. You and your wife getting out of town. Where do you
My
go?
favorite place is Pismo, the coast, for sure.
Genre of music. If it was on Pandora and you had to just pick a genre.
I'm going to tell you the only music I listen to is in Russian, and it's our church music. That I have a love for our church music.
What would you say is Greg's superpower?
Uh, passion to, I have passion for life and passion to encourage people. That are my two biggest things in life right now.
I felt your passion the moment we met and
Yeah.
talked. If you could spend time with one person, alive or past, dead, gone, for an hour interviewing them, who would it be?
Jesus, without a doubt. He's not dead, but it would be Jesus because I'd have a lot of questions and they probably sound like a lot of why.
That's beautiful. And if you were to teach others, say, let's say in our industry, if you were to teach others in real estate, what would a subject be that you would choose to teach?
Again, and I do. I I'm going to say this real quick, Tulio. When I got into my 50s, I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting old." And then when I got to my 60s, I kind of gasped and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm scared that I'm getting old." I have learned God has opened up the doors to me to encourage younger agents, and the 60s have become the best decade of my life.
Mm.
And it's just to what I would teach the young agents getting into this is mindset. You have value, and don't be afraid to take that value and share it with other people.
That's a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I'm so glad I know you better now, and I know your history, and I know your story and everything. Thank you.
This was awesome. This I'm honored, and Tulio, thank you so much for having me. You made my week, my month.
Absolutely. You as well, my friend. All right, everybody. That was another episode of Real Pivot Connections with Greg Kosareff.
You got it.
All right. And hey, Greg, rattle off your cell phone number if someone doesn't have you in their phone for the Fresno area, the San Joaquin Valley, right? That's what we call it. Is that right?
Yeah. Hey, if you want to call for encouragement, give me a call at 559-960-5628. We'd have a great conversation, believe me.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg. Everybody, we will see you in about a week. Y'all take care.